I think I'm connected. Okay. Hello. This is Dr. Kamani, licensed clinical psychologist. Thank you for tuning in today. We're going to have a double dose of me this week. So today we're talking about Black women in toxic work environments, but also in terms of living a soft life. And what does that mean for Black women? Because so many times we are living a life of struggle, and we've been taught that we've had to live a life of struggle, that we have to work twice as hard. But what does it mean for us to embrace a soft life? So that's what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm not saying that being in a toxic job is a soft life, right? We're talking about how to be in a toxic job and transition to living a soft life. So we have a very special guest today. So right now, if you can please subscribe to my channel, Lifting As We Climb Consulting, Wellness Services. And again, welcome to my channel, where we talk about ways to support Black women healing from toxic work environments. And I love to help Black women leaving from these toxic jobs because we deserve so much better. So I want to turn it over to my very special guest, Dr. Nikki Coleman. So Nikki, if you can introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Sure. Thank you so much, Kimani. Is it Kimani, Dr. Kimani? How do you like to go by?
Well, it's both about, like, how do you prefer to be called?
I am always happy with Nikki. Somehow people just automatically start calling me Dr. Nikki. I think it just rings or something like that.
Yes.
But I got this degree a long time ago. I don't have anything to prove to anybody about that.
Exactly.
So I'm Nikki.
And let me just say this, Nikki, is that the reason I'm asking you that, and I'm being very intentional, I think why you're being very intentional, is that as Black women, we go through so much to get these degrees. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have to fight to even get the degrees.
Yes.
So we want to give honor to another Black woman. If you got your stuff, I'm like, hey, doc, right? I want to acknowledge that, because so many spaces, and particularly in toxic work environments, we are not given the respect that, we've worked and gotten these degrees and we have experience, but many times they will downplay it and won't even acknowledge it. So that's why you heard this exchange between us, because we've both been there. Okay. So
And
Dr.
I
Nick,
have, and definitely we could talk more about that. I have thoughts about all of that anyway.
Yeah.
But I am Dr. Nikki. I'm a licensed psychologist and self-confidence coach. I have a private practice that's based in Houston, Texas, but I have a SIPAC credential, which means I do teletherapy in about 33 of states. I also have and my practice works specifically with Black women and couples around relational, sexual wellness. A lot of the times it's about your relationship yourself. And I particularly tend to work with high achieving Black women. And then I do racial equity training, consultation, and mid-sized organizations.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nikki. So did you want to talk about the part that you were going to talk about before, about the titles and stuff? You want to talk about that first?
Yeah, and I think, I think there'll probably end up being some themes that cover the whole conversation. But, I have worked in environments where, especially when I was a new PhD, I got my PhD when I was 27. So a lot of times when I was teaching, I didn't look older or that much different than the students that I was teaching.
Yeah.
So there was that age component, but also I think there is really we know there's a real thing around white supremacist cultures to sort of assume lesser intelligence and lesser capacity for Black folks, just generally speaking, right? And so when I was earlier in my career, I remember being more about people referring to me as doctor. But then after a while, I realized, but I don't want to play the game on your terms, because that's not really how I see myself. Yeah. And so, and also, you're going to disrespect me either way.
Yeah.
After that, but that doesn't change that. So I quickly sort of let that go after realizing it didn't matter. At one job, my first tenure track job, I had my desk specifically where I had my degrees behind me, on my wall, all my certifications, and they would still come in my office talking to me crazy. So I was like, you know what, y'all gonna do you anyway, so let me just refer to myself in a way that feels comfortable.
Yes. And it's like they're always kind of questioning your worth. No matter what you have to show, there's always
Mhm.
like this questioning. But I think what we're saying too is that, as we evolved in our professional careers, we know what we have, we know we come with, but
Yes,
also you're going to respect, what I'm bringing to the table, right? And I know, Nikki,
absolutely.
I've been in situations where people have refused to acknowledge my degree. Like my last
Mhm.
toxic job, refused to even acknowledge my degree. I've had situations
Mhm.
where I was at a Black conference and three different times, you know how you go to CEUs and they have like
Mhm.
psychologists, social workers, they have different degrees.
Yeah.
I go up to the one for psychologists, and three different times this person questioned if I was a psychologist.
Told you you were in the wrong line.
Yeah, I was in the wrong line, right?
These
Like
social
he
workers are
said,
over there.
right. He said, this is for psychologists. I said, I know. And he said it three different times, like I couldn't read, I was lying or whatever, right? And guess what? I was at a conference for Black people, right? So this is somebody who was not Black and
Mhm.
questioning my competence, right? And my experience. So
Yeah.
we're going to dive
Yeah.
right into the conversation, which, like you said, it really speaks to the experience of toxic work environments, right? So questioning your worth. So, Dr. Nikki, I'm wondering if you can share a little bit about your own experiences of being in a toxic job. And unfortunately, for many times as us as Black women, we have more than one experience, right? So, if you could just
Mhm.
share maybe
Mhm.
one of those experiences. So, in terms of the perspective of you, in terms of what you've gone through as a psychologist, but also as a psychologist helping other Black women. So, a
Yeah.
merge of like your experiences and what you've heard from other Black women in toxic work environments in terms of what that experience has been like.
Sure. Ooh, you asked me to pick one. That's difficult. So let me, um, because so I've in my career been in three environments, and now I'm self-employed and I have my own practice, right? So I have experienced toxicity in each of the toxic, but I think I'll talk about my first one, and that was when I was at first out of graduate school,
Hmm.
my first tenure track position. I'm not sure how, I know universities still do this, but it was a really big push in the early 2000s to do these opportunity hires. So to really sort of do targeted hires for folks of color across university settings. And so I was hired through one of those at the University at Albany in upstate New York. And again, so here I am, brand new PhD. I wanted to try academia, but I wasn't one of those people that went to graduate school and thought like I gotta be an academic. I was like, let me see. I think I do well in this environment. This is an environment that they've told Black women that's really not for us. It's not designed for us. We don't really excel in this environment. So, my personality is like, I can show you better than I can tell you, right? So that was
Okay.
part of
Yes.
my motivation. um, but it was in upstate New York. If you ever been to Albany, it is dreary and dreadful. There is zero culture. It's predominantly very clear from the beginning that I was hired as this opportunity hire. Um, and I in the Midwest, I'd gone to graduate school in the University of Missouri. And Missouri is one of the Midwest states that was still part of the Confederate. So in a lot of ways, it felt very Southern to me, which is where I'm from.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I realized that in retrospect, I realized that a lot of the racism I had experienced in graduate school was really more overt. And so me
Mm.
being in University of Albany was the first time I had sort of been into intensely covert racist environment. And so it just was there was constantly this called catch-22 racism, right? So there's this constant undercutting, undermining of you, but also as a Black woman, I think this is a particular through misogyny war, is there's this expectation that you're supposed to be superhuman. So while I'm constantly being undercut, diminished, second guessed, I'm also not getting support. I'm being told directly to my face, you can figure it out. I don't think it's appropriate for me to intervene at this time. And I was getting it like the students were really they were coming after me. They did not like that I looked the way that I looked, that I held as much authority. Oh, it was the students for it was the students for sure.
Wow.
Oh yeah. So the students questioned me.
Wow.
Constantly. And part of it, so they put me in the cultural diversity classes. They put me in the they put me in which, so let me say it this way, they put me in and it matched my skill set, right? So I was teaching like multicultural courses, but also if you are, as you know, when you train to be a therapist, you have to do what's called practicum, or you do pre-practicum. So these classes that are sort of inherently high anxiety for students to begin with, right? So students get evaluated more critically in these classes. And those were the classes that align with my skills. I trained these classes. And then the multicultural classes, right, where we're openly talking about homophobia and racism and religious hegemony, right? So all the like stuff. And there I am, 27-year-old me, in front of the classroom with confidence and authority, right? And I think it just really was triggering for them. And then the faculty were not as aggressively, they weren't aggressively racist, but they were extremely microaggressive. That's all I can say. Like I was literally told by a senior faculty member, we love having you here, Nikki. And it's not just because you're Black, you're also really funny. Like publicly out loud. Yes. Yes. And that's so that's been like
it's like a compliment, but not really. Dr. Nikki, Dr. Nikki, the internet seems kind of spotty. Does it seem spotty on your end too? Dr. Nikki, does it seem kind of spotty too? Can you hear me okay?
Can you hear me?
I hear you, but it's kind of spotty.
I can hear you, but I don't think you can hear me.
I hear you. I hear you, but it's kind of spotty.
Okay. Let me see if I can connect to a different Wi-Fi in the house. I might have to come back in.
Okay.
I'll try that.
Okay. So I want to say to the audience, thank you for tuning in. We've been having conversations about Black women in toxic work environments. I think I started maybe a year ago. It was part of my own healing journey to, try to process what was going on with me. And, it's interesting that the more we talk about trauma, the easier it is. And I knew that I was not in a good place, right? And I knew that what was happening to me was happening for a reason, even though I didn't see it at the moment. But I think the reason that it was happening to me was for me to really share my story and share my testimony, and knowing that as a therapist, that when we share our stories, that it's healing not only for me, but for other people. And so my hope is that by sharing my story, by being very transparent about my own painful journey to get this place right now, that I'm helping to heal other Black women. So, again, I just want to thank everybody for tuning in, for all the support that I've gotten from other Black women, particularly when I left that toxic job. I got a lot of support. And so I just want to say thank you again for all the support. So Nikki, were you okay? So
am I
you were
back?
able to connect?
Better?
That seems better.
Okay.
That seems better.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I've been having connection issue. Let me get to the sum, right? I think it really connects to what you were just saying. When you are a professional, you get trained to enact the skills, develop your own craft within that particular profession. There is no part of your training as a Black woman that specifically teaches you how to navigate being a Black woman as a professional, right? So all of my challenges as a faculty member, or in any work environment that I've been in. So I've been in academia most of my career, and then I worked for a short stint in corporate healthcare. But it's always been about navigating the the culture. It's always been about navigating the politics of the environment, not about my capacity or my competency, right? And so essentially I ended up getting like sick. Like I just was like it was all sort of, the stress was sort of somaticizing in my body. And at the second year, I was like, I can't stay here. Like, I don't know what else my next step is, but I can't stay here because this is, it's really killing me. So I ended up leaving. I got another tenure track position that worked out for me a much longer time. Eventually, I encountered some challenges there that I won't take up more time to talk about. But to sort of wrap this all up, so I leave University of Albany a year later. I think it was a year. At most, it was 2 years later. I'm at a conference. And I see, it had to be a year later. I'm at a conference, Association of Black Psychologists conference. And I see a Black school psychologist. She had applied for a position at UAlbany in the same department as I was leaving. And so I went up to her to say, hi, check in. And she looked at me like she didn't recognize me. And then it finally clicked. She was like, oh my God. And she was like, you look like a totally different person. She was like, oh my God. Oh, she was like, you look so radiant. You look so happy. Like she was like, it took me a minute. She was, and she was like, was telling me, she was like, this woman, when she interviewed me, like she looked like a completely different person. I was like, yeah, because they was trying to take me out. It really was like manifesting in my body. And so that's one of the things that I think, you asked me to talk about other people's experience.
That's profound. Can I say something, Dr. Nikki?
Yeah,
that
sure.
Part, right? The part that knowing that where you are at is killing you. And I know that I have absolutely had that experience. And I was like, God, this place is killing me. And I knew it. And, when I was on leave, I took a leave for a year and I was in the shower. And I talk about this. I was in the shower and I heard the voice of God, Dr. Nikki, saying to me, if you go back to that job, that's a death sentence. And I knew it was going to kill me. I knew it. So the part about knowing that, but still going through it, right? Because I've seen other Black women stay at toxic jobs and they get very, very sick, right?
100%,
I've seen a lot of Black women at my previous toxic job and they have died, right? Can you speak a little bit about how was it that we come to connect to this job is killing me, right? And the part about too, if you could speak to, it's a lot. The part you can also speak to about maybe recognizing the job is killing us, but I'm too scared to leave. I'm too scared that I won't get another job. I'm too scared I'm going to fail. I'm too scared there's nothing else I'm going to do. I'm too scared I'm a single mother. Like all these different things. Can you speak to that part?
Sure. I can speak professionally and personally on all those pieces. And I think you're absolutely on to something, Kimani. I think that's one of the things that I do intentionally with my clients is working with them to connect with their bodies. I always say that most of us are living from here up. We are just completely disconnected from everything that's happening in our bodies. And so part of it is you have to slow down. It's no easy way. There's no quick formula, but the primary step is you have to slow down and at least acknowledge that you are been disconnected from yourself, right? Sometimes the way that trauma works, it makes us feel unsafe even in our own bodies, right? And so we have to be aware of that. So, but taking the time to sort of slow down and take a moment and catch your breath. And part of it for me was realizing my symptoms were pretty like they were pretty extreme. Like for whatever reason, my blood pressure had increased, and like I could feel like almost like my pulse in my neck, like it was throbbing constantly. So it was like distracting, right? And I was like, something is wrong with me. And so when you start, where your sleep is disrupted, or you wake up in the morning and you're still as tired as when you went to bed, or you maybe go to sleep, but your brain doesn't ever turn off. When you notice that there are changes in your eating habits, not because you're choosing certain foods, but because it feels like it's giving you a sense of comfort. When you are irritable, right? When you're snapping at little things, all of those are indicators that your body is not in its optimal state. And I think what happens, part of the biggest threat of white supremacist capitalist culture to Black women is it it trains us to worry about the symptoms and not the root cause, right? So then we think, I just need to work on eating better, or I just need to exercise, right? We internalize
Or
it
I
as
need to
being
take a vacation.
our responsibility only,
Yes.
and not
Yes.
naming the system that's actually
Yes.
impacting us.
Yes, yes, yes. And so it's so important to recognize the ways that the system is making us sick. And I talked about this before. You cannot heal in the same environment that's harming you. And Dr. Nadia Lopez talked about, I don't know if you saw this, Dr. Nikki. She had a post, she had two posts on LinkedIn. One was talking about, being in a toxic job and how that impacted her health, right?
Mhm.
And she said, why kill myself for a toxic job that would not grieve in my grave, right? Then she also posted something where it was a video where she's talking to her daughter, and her daughter was talking about how painful it was to see her mother go through this harm in the
Mhm.
workplace. So she loves her mother. She sees her mother going through this, and she couldn't understand, wait a minute, my mother is only trying to help children. Why are people attacking her?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
recognizing that the toxic job, the impact impacts our family, our friends, our children, right? So it's not only the harm to us, it's the harm to those who love us and care for us too.
Oh,
Yes.
100%. So
Yes.
I'm a full-time single mom, and when so I left U Albany, I would go to University of Houston. I was at University of Houston for 14 years.
Ooh.
Um and it by the time I left, I was at a point where I would drop my daughter off to school, I would
Mhm.
drive to work, I would sit in the parking lot and I would weep. And then I would say, "Get it
Ooh.
together.
Oh God.
Come on, let's get it together." I would go in one of
Oh,
the other buildings that I didn't work in, put some cold water on my face, and then go to the office and like, I'm here, ready, like, to do the thing. And then when I finally decided, like, I cannot keep doing this, right? Like I am not living a life that I want for myself. I'm not living in alignment with my own values. I am not living. I am sort of
yes.
surviving and scrapping through day in and
And
day
you're
out.
performing. It's like you're masking yourself. Like
Oh,
you put on the
100%.
mask, the happy mask. Oh, hey, da, 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 and you're struggling. You're dying inside.
Oh, no, I think I had one colleague come to me at one point towards the end, and he was like, Are you okay? It was like, you kind of been, it's like sort of in faculty meetings, you've been a little, I don't know, a little bit more. I think I was being more snappy, or he's like, I just want to check in. And
Mm,
I'm looking like, I'm not gonna tell you. Like, I'm not gonna tell you it's
exactly.
you and all of you that's making me feel this way. I was like,
Exactly.
you know what?
Exactly. Exactly. No,
Keep it to yourself.
I'm not gonna tell you. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
And
Because
that sense
when
of
I've
having to
tried
be
to
on
tell
guard
you,
too, Dr. Nikki. You have to be on guard.
oh, 100%. And when I've tried to
Yeah.
tell you in ways that are appropriate, so I am now working within this system to try to advocate for myself or talk about what needs to be different. It's dismissed, it's undermined, it's avoided, right? So I'm not going
Gaslighting.
to have a more vulnerable conversation with you.
Right. Right.
So, but a fast forward to me leaving that job, and from a stress level
Mhm.
to leaving academia altogether, from a stress level and from a financial level, my work environment like did a 180 overnight, right? So I moved into the DEI space at a healthcare organization here in Houston. It's a major pay upgrade for me. And I told my daughter, I was like, I'm leaving, academia. I'm going to work at this other place. And she was 7 at the time, and
Mhm.
she was so excited for me, Kimani. And the first thing she said was, "Mommy, I'm so happy for you. I'm so happy you won't be stretched out so more." She was trying to say
Oh,
stressed, but at 7, she was
yes,
like,
but she knew
"Mommy, you're
mommy
not
was
going to be
being
stretched out
harmed.
so much." And it immediately changed our relationship. Like
Isn't
it
that
was,
something?
it was such a um aha moment for me. I didn't realize how much my stress, anxiety, fatigue, and burnout was taking its toll on my ability to parent. Um,
Yes.
and she was a fallout, right? And it changed things dramatically. And then fast forward, right? So middle of the pandemic,
Mhm.
I end up leaving this other job because we ran it like I just hit it an impasse, like legitimately in the DEI space, teaching a class about anti-racism, and I'm asked by my Latina supervisor and the Black man who is the AVP of diversity to not talk about white supremacy, like to not
What?
like name white people
Stop
as
it. Don't talk about the
specifically
big
Coleman.
elephant in the room. And white supremacy is what we're talking about to dismantle. How do you talk about anti-racism without talking about white supremacy? That
Kimani,
makes no
I had,
sense.
wait a minute. My definition of systemic racism was a system and set of practices, policies, and beliefs that advantage whites and disadvantage other groups of color. They told me I needed to change my definition. I couldn't just name white
Stop.
people.
No. And just that in and of itself, that was white supremacist behavior, right? So I always talk to people that when we think about white supremacy, that it permeates all of our systems, right? Schools, healthcare, everything. But the other
Everything.
part is that white supremacy is not just about white people. It's about white supremacist behaviors. So the person may not even be white, right?
They were
Black
not.
man, Latina, right? I know I've experienced that too. They weren't even mostly white people, right?
Mm-mm.
But they're engaging in this behavior that's silencing. I'm gonna
Yes.
silence you and I'm gonna tell you what you need to say.
And they
What?
threatened my job. They told me I was being insubordinate.
What? How dare you,
I am the
Dr. Nikki?
PhD. I am the PhD.
Wow.
I sat in a meeting and I said, I have published papers with my name as peer-reviewed publications that talk about systemic racism in this framework. And you want me to stand in front of this computer and not say that? And I literally said,
Wow.
Kamani, I will never forget. I said, even if I wanted to do what you asked me to do, I know for a fact my ancestors would steal the breath out of my throat and wouldn't let me do it.
That part. That part, right? And I think what's so important, Dr. Nikki, I feel like we're like soul sisters, right? It's a part of, you know, my connection and my honor to my ancestors will not allow me to be complicit in the oppression of myself or others. I will not bow down. I will not be silenced. I'm going to get louder, right? So all these different things. And
Yes.
sometimes I think it's important for us to know as Black women the importance of being true to ourselves and our ancestors, but it comes at a cost too. It does come at a cost.
100%. So
It
that
does
speaks
come
to
at a
your
cost.
part that I think is really important that we talk about the fear. Because let me
Yeah.
be clear, me weeping in that parking lot, me knowing for a fact I was either, and my thought was similar to yours. Yours was, if you go back to this job, it'll kill you. The thing that came up for me that one morning was, it's either you or this job. There, you cannot have both.
Ooh.
So which one is it gonna be? And I choose me, right? But that also
Yes.
does not take away the real material capitalistic threat. Like, I have to feed my family. Like,
Yes.
I have a mortgage
Survival.
to pay, right? I have to survive. And that fear in both instances, because in the second time, right? I'm like, I cannot do the thing you're asking me to do. And then they were threatening to sit in on my trainings to make sure
No,
they were going to
stop.
police me. The levels of the white
Oh.
supremacy.
Oh. We're gonna put you in your place for real. We're gonna be there with you. Because you're not competent enough to teach what you're supposed to be teaching. So we gotta be there for you and police
We got
you.
to watch you. And so in
Ooh.
each situation, there was no other option for me to go forward. And I
Mm.
still had immense amount of fear, right?
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
that's if anybody listening takes nothing away, is sometimes you make the right choice staring fear in the face. Like, I'm
Yep.
not saying that I'm some, amazing, wonderful person that somehow subverts the system. I do that because I choose to live a life that allows me to feel like I am alive, where I
Yeah.
don't feel like I'm being compromised. But I have done
Yeah.
that at great consequence, right?
Yes.
At great consequence.
Yes. And I think also, Dr. Nikki, knowing that you're being true to yourself, like I know that I can always look at myself and know that I did the right thing, that I honored myself. And it was even a time that one time it was so powerful. I was going to the doctor's office. I was probably going to the doctor's office to get another documentation about why I should be
Yeah.
on leave, right?
Mhm,
So I was going to the
mhm,
doctor's office and all of a sudden I started crying profusely, right?
mhm.
and I'm crying profusely. And literally, Dr. Nikki, it was like the little girl in me, the little girl Kamani said, don't make me go back there. Don't make me go back there. Right. And so by not going back there, I was being true to myself. And so I can always look at myself in the mirror and know that I didn't dishonor myself. And then I
Yes.
also think about, Dr. Nikki, like I have two sons, right? And my hope is that I'm showing them by me leaving that you deserve better, that there are other options for you. You will not be bullied. This is how you stand up to bullies,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And just stand in your worth, even if you're fearful.
Yes.
Even if you're fearful, right? And I know
Yes.
my son said to me when I was on leave, they asked me, are you going back to that job? And I said, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out. And they begged me not to go. They begged me not to go, right?
I
Because
love
they
it.
saw how unhappy I was. And so we
Yes.
don't want to teach our children that you should be at places that dishonor you and stifle your
100%.
growth and tell you not to shine. So all those different things. So Dr.
Yes.
Nikki, yeah, go on, go
I
on.
was gonna say, like, so I the end point was, is it gonna be you or this job? But before that,
Mm,
almost every time when I was in that car crying, or I'm in my office like trying to make myself just go to this next meeting, whatever, I kept thinking, is this the kind of woman you want your daughter to believe she can be? Is this the
yes,
version of a woman that you want to model for your child? And every time that thought came up, it literally was like nauseating to me. Like, absolutely not. I would never
right.
want her to feel like she had to make herself small to fit
Yes,
in anywhere, right?
yes.
So that is true. And then the other thing that I also think is really important, to go back to this body, mind, environment connection, right? So you were talking about being like the weeping, right? And that's a trauma response. Like, your body
Mm-hmm.
is flooded with so many stress hormones that it has to come
Yes.
out in some way. For me, when I took the leave, I remember like I was like exhausted. So I was sleeping a lot, but I would sort of like wake up as a startle, like I forgot something, right?
Mm,
Like in a panic, like I need to be doing something. Is there email? I
mm,
missed a deadline. Like, it took me about 2 weeks, 2 weeks of like having those moments, like out of the blue, of just being like panicked while I
mm.
was on leave, before my body finally was like, oh, we don't have to, we don't have to work this hard. Oh, we're not in the
Yeah,
same mode right now.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And can I just speak to, or can we speak about the double message? And I want to say the mind, blah, 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 but I'll say the mind screw up, right? That
Mm-hmm.
we are both psychologists, right?
Mm-hmm.
We are both tasked with helping to heal other people.
Mm-hmm.
Yet we have worked in systems that are harming us. As we are then asked to do work that's trauma informed, we're asked to do work that's reflective DEI, but we're being beat down in the process.
Yes.
That double message, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is a true, like, that is like, okay, what's happening here? And I think it's like disorienting, like, what in the
Mm-hmm.
world? So, Dr. Nikki, can you talk about what was the final straw, right? So, the final straw for you, and I think it's important for other Black women to know this, like, be aware of your body, right? We talk
Mm-hmm.
about the mind body connection, but also be aware of when you are just at that point, you're like, this is it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, what was like that this is it moment for any of those jobs?
Okay, so when and I love this question, because I think there's mind, body, and there's spirit.
Yes.
So when I left academia, I can't tell you what the last straw was. I know for a fact, if I woke up in July, so I wasn't even teaching. I had some administrative roles, but it was a day in July. I sent my daughter off to summer camp, and I remember thinking, "Oh, I'm done. Yeah, I'm not going back." Like, it just was that. I always say I wish I had marked it in my calendar, but there was such a level of peace. It literally was like a line had been drawn in the sand. I am done.
Yeah.
I'm not going
Yes.
back in the fall to go through
Yes.
this again. And I have no regrets about it, no worries whatsoever. So when I actually left academia, I was on a high. I was super excited. I was gleeful cleaning out my office. Like,
Yes.
uh, that was good. And then when I left the healthcare organization, um, it was, I couldn't, I had a meeting to be confronted about the content of my classes. And then the response from this grown Black man, let me be clear, like this Black man was near retirement. This man was ex-military. This man was an Omega. Like this grown 60-something ex-military Black man sat in my face on that Zoom call and said, well, I don't speak for the DEI. I don't speak for the organization. I will have to check in with the chief diversity officer and get back to you. Because I put options on the table. I said, well, if you don't want to talk about racism from this lens, you have a couple options. You could get somebody else to teach the class. I'm happy to give them my materials and they can make it what they want. We could take a step back and pull the class and say the organization is not ready for this level of frank discourse, and we can do some more remedial level training to get to that place. I said, I'm even willing to host interdialogue groups or do some more executive coaching. Here's an array of options. They were not interested in either of those options. And that is what let me know, oh, it's not at all about the work. Like you're not even willing to pretend at all it's about the work. It is all like, you're not even willing to say, well, those were interesting suggestions. Like you could at least like, well, for budgetary reasons, that's not a good.
You couldn't even play.
Y'all wouldn't even plan like the work mattered, right? So that to me was like, I cannot do this. And that's how convicted I am with regard to my understanding about systemic racism, my identity as a Black woman. You said the key word earlier was like erasure. I refuse to erase myself. What kind of cool would I look like teaching this anti-racism class, not just a racial prejudice or racial discrimination, or we're all different. So, but an anti-racism class and not name white supremacy. Like what?
Right. You're not going to do that. You're not going to do that.
It was like, I cannot move forward. I don't know how else I would. And you're telling me I can't not teach this class. And then you're telling me you're going to monitor me when I teach it.
Wow. That's the epitome of somebody putting shackles on you. You know what I'm saying? Like they're trying to just like, you better bow down, right? When you think about race, whites, you're going to bow down to me, right? And you said, no, I'm not going to bow down to you because my ancestors had to bow down for me to be here. So I'm not doing that. And Dr. Nikki, oh my God, girl, we could do a whole nother thing about the racism in graduate school. We could do a whole thing on that. I left one graduate program because of racism and had to start all over again, right?
Yep.
But what we have to go through as Black people, as Black women, trying to get these degrees, trying to get to these certain positions, and then we get there after all we've had to go through and we treat it like that, it feels like, wait a minute, I did not go through all of this to get here by somebody who's not, you know what I'm saying? And you're going to try to put me in my place? No, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that, right?
And you're not qualified to put me in my place. Like, we're not on the same level.
That part, Dr. Nikki, that part.
Put me in my place.
Girl, let me tell you this right quick, right? And we're going to talk about clients too. But my last toxic job, I mentioned that many people there refused to acknowledge my degree, right? Not that I was going around like, but they just refused to acknowledge it. And then they did this mind trip thing where they tried to make me think, again, I have a higher degree. They're trying to make me think that I wasn't good enough, that I needed to, and I'm like, what? Like, what? And then I have to go to you to do things for Black people, and you're not even Black. What are you saying? What are you saying right now, right? So all of that, the ridiculousness, I just want to just put that out there, that if you are in graduate school right now, I'm with you. We're with you, right? We know how hard it is. Please find your sources of support, your mentors, your circles, because it is a battle. It is a challenge.
You cannot do it without that. You cannot do it by yourself. It is not.
No.
It is not designed for you to get through it by yourself.
No, it is not. It is not. It is not. Okay. So let's transition and talk about clients. So what have you heard in terms of your Black clients, particularly Black women clients, about being in a toxic job? What are some of the themes that you've heard?
So, my clients come to me mostly because they are how the way that I was described is they recognize that they are not living in alignment with themselves, right? The version of themselves that they feel most connected to internally
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
congruent with how the rest of the world is responding to them or perceiving them. And it's
Yeah.
reached a point where sort of that tension, they are no longer willing to let them be the primary victim or fall out of that tension.
Hmm.
So they
Hmm.
don't, I don't have clients that so here's the interesting thing.
Hmm.
I only have 2 male clients, and both of them have come to me around work stress. Um,
Interesting.
yeah. So the male clients I think can lean in more to saying this workplace environment is fueling sort of this racial stress or racial trauma that I'm having.
Yeah.
My black women clients don't necessarily lead with that, but it's always a part of the conversation. And what it typically looks like is around having a limited amount, if sometimes zero spaces where they feel like they can be fully themselves and be valued and appreciated.
Mm,
Um, and so, and work is just a part of sort of that list.
yeah.
So for me, I sort of take the route that if you are a black woman working in a professional setting, you're in a toxic environment. Sometimes it is actively toxic and working to harm you, but there's at least something that is happening on a daily basis for you that is attached to your black womanness that causes you to have a more or differently stressful experience in that environment. And over
Yes.
time, that has the capacity to be toxic. So I think
Yes.
I just, it is such a common experience for black women to talk about having other people CC'd, having other people
Oh,
CC'd on emails that
or
have
having
nothing
to
to do
check
with
your
other
email
people.
before you send it.
Like all of those things, or you say something in the meeting, you make a suggestion, and then it's like you a ghost in the wind, and then some white woman says the exact same thing that you just said, and everybody
And
thinks
it's
this is a great
brilliant.
idea.
Yes, brilliant.
Like those regular onslaught of experiences every
Yes.
day is sort of just
Yes.
what being a black woman in the workplace is. And then you can't
Yes.
assert yourself too much because then you're intimidating or you're
And you're
angry.
threatening. Yes. And you're
You're not
scaring
a
other
team
people.
player.
Oh, that's the part I was gonna say. You're not a team player. Yes. Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. So that's sort of the stuff that I see with my clients, right? And it's really like, how do I navigate this additional thing
Yeah.
among all the other ways that just black womanhood
Yeah.
in and of itself is is problematic because of the systems that we have
Yes.
to engage in, right?
Yes. Black womanhood is beautiful. However, the systemic racism and oppression that we experience makes our experience many times very challenging, right? But there's the
100%.
beauty of it too. Yes.
Oh, I listen, I will say unapologetically and without stuttering, black women are the highest expressions of humanity ever put on this planet. Period. And that is
Yes.
why they struggle. Like we are,
Yes.
our very presence in the room is a threat.
Yes. Exactly.
Our very presence in the room is a threat.
Yes.
No
Yes.
matter
Yes.
how kind you are, no matter how quiet you are, no matter how many people in your life love you and think you are the greatest thing since sliced bread, in those corporate spaces where you hold any expertise, you hold yourself
Mm-hmm.
accountable in any way for your position or role, it's threatening.
Absolutely. And I don't know how many times I've heard this. I don't know how many times you've heard this. Oh, they're just intimidated by you're intimidating, right?
Mhm.
And I'm like, wait, wait, wait. No, no, no. You're acting like I'm doing something to them. They are intimidated by me because they are insecure. But I'm not going to tone it down because they are insecure, right? I
Mhm.
even had this woman, a so-called ally, right? That could be a whole nother conversation, right? A so-called ally, and there were two of us, two Black women who had PhDs, right? And so she said, you know, I feel like the use of doctor, in introducing you guys or referring to you guys as doctor, I think that will off put other people,
No, it's
right?
off-putting you to you. And by
Okay,
other people, you mean you, Becky.
okay. Let's call it out. Let's call a thing, right? Like Ayanna says,
Yes.
let's call it out, right? So for you with your clients, I know I have similar experiences with my clients. I also have clients, Black women clients. Most of my clients are Black women, right? Just like you.
Mm-hmm.
They have talked about feeling like this is not the life that I want for myself.
Right.
Like I did not work this hard. I did not sacrifice this much. I always have so many things I have to take care of and do that I've lost myself. I don't even know who I
Mhm.
am anymore. I'm disconnected from who I am, right?
Yes.
And so there's so many Black women that I've worked with about that. And so my focus with them is not only how to support them in their healing, but
Mm-hmm.
also to come up with like a roadmap about how to navigate, right? So,
Yes. Yes.
what is it that you do with your Black women clients who are in toxic work environments? What strategies do you have that you do with them?
Yeah. So I, there is such a theme, or themes that I was hearing and working with my clients over and over again, that I realized like I was talking about the same things and
Yes.
supported them over and over again. So actually one of the things that I've done is develop this soft life virtual retreat. I when I heard the term soft life, I was like, well, this is the perfect language, right? Because I think that it's such the antithesis of the strong Black woman. It's such the antithesis of
Yes.
all the things systems are expected of us to do.
Yes.
And when I mean systems, I also mean within race systems, right? Our relationships with our family or in our community, right? We all um, uh, get sort of socialized or conditioned around these same ideas around
Absolutely.
Black women being the
White
mules of
supremacy
the earth.
permeates all of our systems. It permeates
Yes,
everything. Yeah.
yes. So in that retreat, the four things that I talk about are authenticity. So that piece around who am I? Like,
Mm,
is this version of myself today the version that I want of myself? Right? Like,
mm.
and at one point did I lose myself? Right? Because what
Oh,
happens is
yes.
we get rewarded and reinforced for our successes, right? For the
Yes.
degree, for the advancement at work, for the accomplishments.
Mm-hmm.
And that can sometimes, more often than not, sort of unconsciously pull us along. And then we wake up at age 30, wake up at age 35, we wake up at age 45, like, but wait a minute. Who was little girl Kimani? Who was little girl Nikki? And what were the things that she loved and made her happy and made her excited?
Yes.
And where do those things now sit in you? Are you even aware of them? Right. So the
Yes.
authenticity piece is key.
Yes.
And then secondly is self-compassion. We are so hard on ourselves. The world is so hard on us that most of us adopt this really harsh internal critic as a way
Mm-hmm.
to sort of preemptively protect ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So if I am hard on myself, then whatever comes at me is not going to hurt as much, or I'm already be 10 steps ahead, right? Or I'm gonna be able to,
Yes.
I have a plan A, B, C, D, E, and F, right?
Right.
Right? Like you ain't gonna get
Exactly. The whole alphabet. I got you.
And so
Yeah.
then what happens is we start to have superhuman expectations for ourselves. The
Yes.
world sees us as superhuman, and then we start to say, well, I don't have time to feel sad. I don't have time to acknowledge that this job is killing me. I don't have the ability to even take a moment and be slow and soft with my child because I got things to do. Like we internally just become so hard on ourselves. And
Yeah.
then when we fail, or when we make a mistake, or we blow up or have that moment, or some ball gets dropped, then our only tool is to sort of criticize ourselves, punish ourselves, go internal and figure out what we did wrong and how not to do it again. And so
Yeah.
self-compassion, for me personally, working to lean into self-compassion,
Yeah.
and just for me, so for the audience, self-compassion is really just asking yourself to treat yourself the same way you would a loved one, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if your best friend had a mess up and you were trying to help support them, whatever expectations you have for their humanity, for their fallibility, their accountability, are the same things you need to have for yourself. You are no different.
Yeah.
The
Yes.
expectations for you are no higher.
Yes.
And then we talk about boundaries, 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 boundaries,
So
because
important.
Everybody in the world thinks they have access to Black women whenever they
Yes,
want,
they
however they
do.
want, for as long as they want.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And it's pushed back if you don't go along with what their expectation is of you.
Oh my God. And that I find it happens across the board, but I feel like the
Yes.
boundaries piece shows up most in our most intimate relationships.
Yes, yes,
Black
yes.
mother-daughter relationships are a whole other show, right? Like,
For
so
real. That could be a series, okay?
it really is a series. My mom was here a couple months ago, sometime earlier this year, and I had been up in my office seeing clients. And then I come downstairs, and before my foot could hit the bottom step, she is on me. You didn't take any meat thought out. What we gonna eat for dinner? And I also been cleaning out this pantry. Why don't you? Where do you want? And I was like, wait a minute, give a sister a break, like a break.
Right.
And she was like,
right.
we don't have time for a breath. Da, 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 da. And I was like, I understand that working like this is what you are used to. That's not what I'm doing. I need a moment at the end of the day to take a breath and decompress. And just saying that, come on, just that tiny little book, that's not even a whole boundary. That was she was like taken aback, like
right.
Like she didn't know
and
what
giving
to do with
ourselves
herself.
permission to doing so is not disrespectful to our parent, to our mother.
Correct.
It's not disrespectful, but it's also asserting that we are a woman, right? I've had woman-to-woman conversations with my mother, right? And she's kind of like, what? You know what I'm saying? But it's like, no. I am a grown woman.
And
You
this
know
is
what I'm saying?
my house.
So I'm not, you know, I'm your daughter, but you're still gonna respect me.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And I still have a voice.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So so authenticity, self-compassion, boundaries, and then pleasure. Pleasure. Because we do all of this stuff, and then we tell ourselves, well, I've earned a vacation. I'm gonna take a couple days off, or I'm gonna buy me this nice bag. Like we feel like we have to work to give ourselves things to bring us joy. And also I'm a big proponent of, you know, if you like things, you like things. I like nice things too, but I think the real investment in our joy and pleasure are things that are more intangible, right? So that I am able to facilitate a sense of well-being that is well-rounded. So for me, it's not about the absence of toxicity. It's not about the absence of stress or pain. It's about what am I doing to fill my cup up, to nourish myself? What am I doing that is selflessly just for me? Because like I don't need to justify it. I don't need to explain to anyone else, but it makes me happy. It brings me joy, and I'm going to do that thing.
And that we deserve joy, not just at the end of the 2 weeks, you know, for a 2-week vacation. You know what I'm saying? Like we need joy daily, basically, right? Yes. And you said something too, and I wanted to ask you about that. You said pleasure is liberation.
Yes.
Can you share more about that?
Yes. So I think so much of my experience when we talk about Black folks and liberation movements, when we talk about just like liberation from this current sort of Western white supremacist culture that we're all living in, to me, it's about the effort to break beyond that I hear so much of, right? What we want to dismantle, what we want things to be different. What I don't hear is for what, right? So for me, it's not just enough to not be oppressed.
Yeah.
It is that we must also create a life that includes pleasure and joy as a fundamental right. It's key to it. So I am going to do this work. I'm gonna leave this job, stand in the fear, and choose myself because I want to live in a world that affirms me, that fills me up, that makes me feel good, that I get access to experiencing bodily pleasure, community pleasure, joyful amusement, entertainment, just because. So for me, if the liberation doesn't contain pleasure, I'm not interested. Because then we're just going to end up recreating some other version of these systems already. I'm not interested in a different way to be productive. I'm not interested in a different way to sort of create a structure or hierarchy in and of itself. I want to create a context that holistically feeds me, that it is equally if we're talking about fair pay, right, fair compensation for labor, then we also need to include time off, rest, relaxation, flexibility around work scheduling,
Yes.
opportunity for pursuits that bring us creativity and joy and things that we can have
Yes.
fun with. It has to be fundamental to that for me.
Yes. I'm so glad you said rest because I was absolutely thinking about that. I was thinking about Trisha Hersey with her book, right? Talking
Yes.
about rest is resistance and manifesto. Please get that book, everybody. I'm listening to it right now. So I was thinking about that in terms of the Nat Ministry, but I was also thinking about the Black Joy book, right? By
Mm.
Tracy Lewis Giggins. And she talked about, I'm
Oh,
having
I do.
right
I
here.
think I have that. Okay.
So everybody, please read this book too, okay? And just talking about that Black joy is something that we've been taught that we don't deserve, right? Or it's been modeled to us that we don't deserve it, or that joy is something external. Joy is
Mm-hmm.
within us, right? And we have every
100%.
right to access that every day. And also challenging the notion that joy means it costs $10,000. It means no. Joy are little things. Like I get joy out of playing with my dogs, right? I get
Yeah.
joy of looking at a flower outside. So joy can be free. It don't have to cost. It don't have to take too much of your time. But how are we incorporating joy within our lives? And we think about rest too. When we think about rest, and Resma Menakem talked about, when we think about rest, and we think about rest for Black people, it's radical rest. So the thought that we can engage in rest and have rest when our ancestors could not,
Could
right?
not.
They had no choice. They could not rest. So when we rest, when we take naps, that heals not only us in the present moment, but it
Mm-hmm.
heals our ancestors, and it also helps our children see the
Yes.
importance of prioritizing rest, right?
Yes.
So, Dr. Nikki, I want to go back to something really quickly before we wind down. Sometimes people might say, what do you mean by soft life? What are you talking
Mm-hmm.
about? Like, what does
Mm-hmm.
that mean? So, can you define what you mean by soft life?
Yeah. So for me, it's about those four things that I just described, right? Like
Mm,
that you have to be intentional about honoring your humanity
mm,
unapologetically because no one else is going to.
yes,
And so the systems will continue to require hardness,
yes,
resilience, overwork, burnout, superhuman capacity. The systems will never stop doing that. And the people in your
yeah,
life that reinforce and uphold those systems will continue to do that, even in love, but unconsciously, right? And so
yeah,
soft life is saying, I'm going to lead with the intention that I choose when and how and with whom I want to invest my energy. And if it's not fueling me up, if it's not filling me up,
mm,
I need to reconsider why I'm choosing to have it in my life, right? So it
yes,
starts by being soft with yourself. That's part of the self-compassionate piece,
mm,
right? Being gentle with yourself and then being intentional about how you are structuring your life, who is
yeah,
in your life that can help support you in living in comfort, in
yeah,
centering joy and pleasure, in
yeah,
making sure that your efforts and your relationships are as reciprocal as possible.
got it. And so, can a Black woman who is in a toxic work environment, can she live a soft life? Can they coexist? And how
Okay,
does that
so
happen?
yeah. Okay, so I don't think about it as either or. I actually
Uh-huh.
think it's a striving,
Okay.
right? I think it's an intentionality and it's a practice. All of the things that
Mm,
I listed, authenticity is a practice, right? We
yes, it
know
is.
for a fact that as Black women, there are certain ways we cannot show up in the workplace and that be acceptable.
Yes.
So the question is, how much of yourself have you just relinquished and let go and know that it won't ever show up, or how much can you actually incrementally or intentionally bring more of your authenticity into the workplace, right? So
Got
thinking
it.
about it as a practice, boundaries are a practice. There's not a boundary that has ever been placed that has not been tested. That you
Yes.
have to constantly reinforce them and
Yes.
learn how to do it in ways that affirm the relationship,
Yeah.
that facilitate connection more so than just sort of cutting people off or keeping you disconnected.
Hmm.
Self-compassion is an ongoing practice, particularly, and I always talk about creating a pleasure praxis. Like you need to think about what are the ways that I am going to intentionally bring pleasure and joy and comfort and softness into my life. So
That.
I say
Be
that when
intentional about it.
yes, so more specifically to answer your question, I think the goal is to lean into living a soft life.
Mm-hmm.
But if at some point the environment is such that it is threatening to you, right? Then that's when I think the toxic becomes too much. So in some ways, you could be in a toxic work environment, but have all of the other parts of yourself be nourished or offset or cared for in other ways. And that really sort of minimizes the impact of that toxicity and
Hmm.
might actually give you more energy, more clarity, other
Mm-hmm.
ways to strategize and tactics to move through that toxic environment that doesn't impact you as much.
Okay.
And for some folks, the answer is going to be no. It's for you and me. There were moments where I can no longer coexist in this environment.
No. Yeah. I
I
can't be
can't
my
do it.
authentic self because they're trying to kill my authentic self, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
knowing that and knowing when to walk away, even though you're scared. So you're saying like the self life helps you to navigate the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
But also being true to your soft self will help you acknowledge or recognize when it's time to go.
100%.
Got it. Got it. Got it.
100%.
Okay. Okay. So as
Yeah.
we're winding down, Dr. Nikki, I'm wondering if you can share with women about the retreat that you
Yeah.
did and the one that you're offering again in
Yes.
January and how they can sign up for that.
Yeah, so the retreat in November was such a success. Like it was I don't know if you've had the experience, if you've ever done something professionally and you were like that was 100% everything I wanted and needed it to be.
Yes. 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 Yes.
And
It was totally aligned with my purpose and what I'm walking in my purpose. Absolutely.
yes.
And well, let me
And
just
I
say this.
knew
And I wasn't able to do that until I left the job because all that clatter and trying to fight these people and trying to prove something to
mhm,
these people and trying to cope and it took away all my creative energy.
yes.
But this
Oh,
is a classic
100%.
example that when you leave, you're able to download what's being revealed to you and walk in that
Yes.
purpose to help other Black women. Yes,
Yes.
I feel
Oh,
you.
all of that. And so like leading up to it, I was like, "Oh, I'm not even anxious. Oh yeah, it's all prepared. I'm ready to go." Woke up that morning, like there was no struggle, there was no effort. It was just joyful. And obviously the first one that I did, you learn some things. So one of the things I
Yeah.
did was expand it. So the original one was 4 hours. Now this one is 6 hours. We'll do a lunch break in the middle. It is virtual, but I'm offering it on
Hmm.
January 14th because I want women to start their years off right.
Yeah.
So it's going to be January 14th. It's 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you can register on Eventbrite. I had a Cyber Week sale, but it ended yesterday. So now you have to register at the full price. But I like to keep it intimate. So no more than 35 women total. And it's a real intimate, self-reflective, interactive space, right? So I talk about these four elements that I discussed earlier, and then there's activities that we do throughout the workshop to sort of highlight how those things are showing up for you personally, and then give you some particular tools and skills around incorporating soft life elements into your life. There's lots of little freebies that I give for you to sort of take away and keep with you. And then it's also about the opportunity to connect with other women
Mm.
that are living with the same intentionality that you are, and have also experienced or experiencing the challenges that you are. The women that were present, none of them knew each other, and everybody was able to sort of be present and be authentic and be vulnerable and share stuff. And there was so much resonance across people's stories. And people were able to walk away definitely feeling connected. I know I felt more connected to the women that showed up. And it just is a really beautiful way for you to spend one Saturday investing in yourself and gaining a lot of tools that you can sort of take away to help facilitate you living in more softness and more loving, gentle compassion with yourself.
Yes. So I'm going to include that information in the description section of YouTube so that
You.
everyone who's watching can register, share this information with other Black women, right? So that we can live a soft life, and also to share with the audience that I also have a product too in terms of the Welcome to Your Queendom digital fillable workbook. We talked about feeling disconnected from ourselves, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I have a roadmap to help Black women reconnect ourselves so that we can have the fulfilling, abundant lives that we deserve, right?
Love it.
So, in closing, can you share with the audience the types of services that you offer as a psychologist and
Yeah.
how people can contact you? So, we talked about the
Yes.
retreat, but what are your other services?
Yes. So I also do individual therapy and coaching. So individual therapy. And the way to contact me is the same for both of them. I do a discovery call for folks for free. You can find that at my Calendly. So it's calendly.com/Dr. Nikki Knows. And so a 15-minute sort of consultation. When you go there, you'll also be able to see if you live in a state where I do therapy. And then if you're not in a state where I do therapy and you want to talk about coaching, we can sort of see if that's a better fit. And I do what I call Black women wellness coaching. So we sort of just talk about your holistic well-being from a mental health perspective. I always incorporate concepts around pleasure and with women. And then folks come to me oftentimes to talk specifically around sexual issues, whether that be recovering from sexual trauma or not feeling in alignment or connected with themselves as sensual sexual beings. And women just really looking to build better relationships with themselves and be in better relationship with the important others in their lives. I work with couples as well. And then on the other side, I do racial healing workshops for nonprofits or Black oriented organizations, and then Black mental wellness trainings, workshops, consultations for small to mid-sized corporations. So I'm all about changing the system if I can, or at
Yes.
least influencing the system while not being in it, because I have learned me being in systems is not a good fit for me. And then also giving healing support and and care for individuals who are being impacted by systems.
Yes, yes. So I'll include that Calendly link in the description section as well. And I
Thank
just want to say,
you.
Dr. Nikki, that I love the work you're doing.
Thank
It
you.
supports individual and collective healing. I'm all about it, right? And so
Yes.
my hope is that Black women watching this video have learned quite a few things, right? But ultimately, for you to know again that you are worthy, you deserve to be affirmed. If you are in any environment that does not respect you, doesn't affirm you, that is not the place for you. As I said before, I don't expect you to immediately leave, right? Unless it's harming you, like it's a life or death situation,
Yeah.
right? But what we are saying is that there are options available for you, and maybe start taking that time in terms of exit planning and planning your way out. Okay. So
100%.
remember, there's options available. I have a pen right now. I don't know if you can see it. It says, "I can, I will," right?
Oh, I
And I
love
know my
it.
motto, yeah, my motto, Dr. Nikki, as I was in that toxic work environment when I knew I had to go, was can't stop, won't stop, right? I'm not
Mm,
letting this experience, it knocked me down, right? But it
mm-hmm.
didn't destroy me. It tried, right? But it didn't destroy me, right? Because I know what my bigger mission is and my bigger purpose is. And I kept fighting for that. And my hope is that for any Black woman also, if you are in a toxic work experience environment, that you get the support you need, right? So if it's your
Mhm.
sister friends, your family, if it's therapy, get the support you need because it is a form of trauma. It is very harmful, right? And my hope
Yes.
is that none of us feels that we are alone. None of us feel that we are stuck. We are not stuck. We do have options. We are
Mhm.
not victims. We are victors. Okay. So again, I will have all of Dr. Nikki's information in the description section of this video. I will also have the link for the Welcome to Your Queendom digital fillable workbook. Oh my God, I forgot to look at the chat. Hold on one second, Dr. Nikki. Oh my God. I'm so sorry. Okay. So I saw it and I said, oh, I'm gonna go back to it. Okay. The amount of workplace toxicity Black women experience in the federal government is astronomical. I'm
Mm,
recovering from that experience. Send you love with that, sis. Yes, we've been there. And I also want to say that healing is an ongoing experience, right?
yeah.
So even though I've left that place, I'm still healing from that place. Okay. So
Mhm.
just to let you know, it's ongoing. Um, I just went through this exact situation. I'm trying to keep my integrity, and it's pure devastation. Yes. So when
Mm.
you stand and you refuse to bow down, you
Mhm.
refuse to sell your soul to the devil, it is a beat down, right? Because they're
Yep.
going to try to beat you into submission. Okay. Yes, we are, period. My Black presence is a threat in the workplace. I was yelled at and dismissed in an administration meeting by my boss. So
Mm.
that public humiliation, right? That happens a lot.
Yeah.
Yes, no need to justify doing something for ourselves. Yes, daily joy. Yes. So we're gonna end on that, right? That
Love
we
it.
deserve joy daily. We
Yes.
deserve it, right? So if it's a minute, if it's 2 minutes, if it's an hour, and it doesn't have to cost money, but we deserve joy daily.
I
Okay.
love
So I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Again, please subscribe to my channel, Lifting As We Climb Consulting Wellness Services, and we will see you the next time. So again, click the stuff in the link that I'll have in the YouTube description. And again, Dr. Nikki, thank you so much for being my
it.
guest.
It was a
And
joy. Thank you for this work. I am so happy to have just been invited, and you are doing amazing, really, really important work. Just naming it, right? And like letting
yes,
people know this is a real thing that you're experiencing
it is.
is pivotal, right?
Yes. And even though we don't know you, Dr. Nikki and I don't know you per se, we are with you, right? We are
So
with
thank
you because
you.
we've been there, right? And we want to show you that healing and hope is possible.
Yes.
Okay. So,
Yes.
yes. Okay. So, bye bye, everyone. Take care and have a good rest of your day. Bye bye.
Bye.